My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 29 years old, and I serve in the U.S. Army's 82nd Airborne Division. People think paratroopers are loud. We're not. We're trained to move first, land hard, and make quiet decisions that change the outcome. I needed all of that the night I learned my parents were planning to kick my 86-year-old grandma out of the house she'd lived in her whole life. No shouting, no scene. Just whispers and calendar invites, and a real estate flyer slipped under a stack of mail. So I did what jumpers do. I checked my lines. I made a plan. And I moved first. A week later, a for sale sign hit the front lawn. Buyers came. Paperwork started. Then everything stalled at one line. And the plan that was supposed to sweep Grandma out the door? It froze, cracked, and backfired loud enough for the whole block to hear. My grandmother is Evelyn Brooks, 86, 5'1" in her church shoes. The Maple Street house is white paint, green shutters, and a porch swing that complains when the wind changes. She has lived there her whole life. That's not poetry. It's a fact. I was home on a long weekend from Fort Liberty when I heard it. My mother's voice in the kitchen low. "We can be under contract in 2 weeks." My father. "She won't put up a fight." The words were tidy like a calendar entry. I stepped in with a mug I didn't remember pouring. "Morning," I said. Mom slid a flyer under the mail. Dad smiled too fast. When Grandma came in from the yard, hands smelling like tomato vines, I pulled out a chair. "This house is yours," I said. She patted the table. "And it's where I intend to die, Lord willing." That night, I did what jumpers do before a hard drop. I laid out what I knew and what I didn't. Facts, risks, actions. Fact. Grandma is sharp. Pays her bills, no dementia. Unknown the deed. Risk a listing, fast track to closing before anyone asks what she wants. Action, find the deed. Anchor her rights in writing. Keep the kitchen from becoming a battlefield. At 800, I was at the county recorder. Denise at the kiosk helped me pull the current deed. 10 years ago, after Grandpa died, my parents had recorded themselves onto title for convenience. Grandma's name remained, but the language was sloppy. Sloppy is all a rush job needs. I called an elder law attorney from church, Dr. Maya Patel. "Bring your grandmother," she said. "We'll do this right." Grandma wore her best cardigan. Dr. Patel shook her hand first and asked the only question that matters. "What do you want, Mrs. Brooks?" "I want my porch," Grandma said. "And my tulips, and to stop being treated like furniture." "Then we write that down," Dr. Patel said. She explained like a recipe. A revocable living trust puts the title in a box with Grandma's rules. A life estate keeps her right to live there as long as she lives. A memorandum of trust at the recorder tells any title company to hit the brakes before closing. Originals in her fire-safe cabinet. Copies for us. No documents tossed in a kitchen drawer. I agreed to serve as trustee, not to move Grandma, to carry the load. We worked through names and contingencies until the air in the room felt steady. Dr. Patel couriered the filings to the recorder before we left. By morning, she said anyone who searches this property will see exactly where they stand. On the drive home, Grandma asked to loop by the river. We watched the current take a cottonwood leaf. "Harm comes quiet," she said. So does help. Back at the house, Mom met us at the door. "Where were you?" "Lawyer," Grandma said, pleasant as pie. "For what?" "For me." Dad had a spreadsheet open on his laptop. He closed it too quickly. "Everything okay?" "Working on it," I said. The next morning, a white SUV pulled up. A woman in a blazer stepped out with a clipboard and a smile you can hear through a phone. "Hi, I'm Jenna with Cardinal Realty. Great light for exterior shots." "Before you take any," I said from the porch call. "Cedar title for a preliminary. There were filings yesterday. You'll want to see them." She didn't argue. Professionals can feel when the ground shifts. She paced the sidewalk on her phone, then came back with the same smile, softer around the eyes. "I'm going to recommend we pause photos until title clears a question," she told my mother. "How long?" Mom asked. "Depends," Jenna said, already stepping away. "I'll be in touch." Dad turned to me. "What did you do?" I put in writing what's been true for 86 years. We ate breakfast in a quiet that wasn't angry so much as new. After dishes, I sat with Grandma on the porch swing and listened to the chain tick. Down the block, Mrs. Henderson watered petunias and waved at the mailman. Nothing dramatic, just a different kind of weather. My phone buzzed at 11:42. Unknown number, open house, Saturday, 12:03. I stared at the message until my neck loosened. If they wanted an open house, we'd open the house to the trust to the life estate, to the part where escrow officers read lines that stopped trains. That afternoon, Dr. Patel called with the recorder's stamp numbers and the APS case number for the file. Not to start a war, just a note in the system in case pressure turned into something uglier. I texted the numbers to my own phone and wrote them on an index card I slipped into Grandma's Bible right next to a clipped recipe for chess pie. Quiet measures, redundancy. The kind of planning the Army drills into you until it's muscle memory. Before sunset, I walked the perimeter like I was back on range duty gate, latch basement window, locks the little metal box with the shut-off key for the water line. Not paranoia, just stewardship. I'm a paratrooper. We jump into other people's chaos. We don't create it at home. When the porch light clicked on at dusk, Grandma touched my sleeve. "You don't have to fight them," she said. "Just stand." "I know," I said. "That's the plan." The open house notice sat on my screen like a dare. Saturday, 12:03, 2 days. I could have yelled. I didn't. I made a list. First, Grandma's voice on paper, in case anyone tried to say she didn't know what she wanted. I drove her to Dr. Shaw, her primary for 15 years. The waiting room smelled like lemon cleaner and magazines from last fall. When the nurse called her name, Grandma stood on her own and tucked a butterscotch in her purse. Dr. Shaw asked questions, the way good doctors do about pills. Sleep names, dates, the year she married Grandpa, the color of her kitchen cabinets. Yellow, Grandma said, because Tom hated the swatches, and I liked the way the sun made them warm. Dr. Shaw smiled. Typed, printed, signed patient is fully oriented, understands her housing decisions, and expresses the desire to remain in her home. I scanned the letter to my phone and sent a copy to Dr. Patel. Second, the recorder's receipts. Denise at the county window recognized me by my ponytail. "You again," she said. "Busy week." "Just trying to do things right," I said. She slid me stamped copies, memorandum of trust life estate deed instrument numbers in the corner, like coordinates. I made 2 sets, put one in Grandma's fire safe, one in my go bag. Jumpers, double up. It's not superstition, it's survival. Third title. I called Cedar Title and asked for the prelim desk. A man named Greg picked up voice like gravel and coffee. I gave the parcel number and asked if anyone had opened escrow. "Can't share much," he said, "but if someone does the memo and life estate you recorded yesterday, we'll trigger an exception. No underwriter touches it without clearing that." "That's all I needed," I said. "Between you and me," he added, "we see this more than we should. Folks get impatient. Paper stops them." After lunch, I trimmed the hydrangeas along the porch walk because Grandma asked and because touch grounds you when your head fills with electricity. Mom came out with a broom and watched me for a while, like she wanted to say something but didn't know where to put it down. "You went to a lawyer," she said finally. "I did," I said. "Why would you cut us out?" "I didn't cut you out," I said. "I put Grandma in." She looked past me at the street. "You don't know what it costs to keep a place like this up." "Then ask," I said. "Don't take." Inside, Dad had a stack of papers on the table, repair estimates, a flyer about as is, offers a printed email with subject line, cash buyer close in 10 days. He nudged it with 2 fingers. "You know what happens when a house sits," he said. "Roofs leak, insurance goes up, taxes." "Then we plan," I said. "We don't bulldoze." He stared at me like I'd forgotten who was the parent and who was the child. The thing about being a paratrooper is you get used to being the youngest person in the room who holds responsibility anyway. I didn't blink. I called APS back, not to file a complaint, but to ask a social worker to stop by and check in, just so there was a note that someone neutral had looked Grandma in the eye and asked her what she wanted. Ms. Alvarez came that afternoon. She wore flats and carried a tote with a phone, a thin laptop, and a packet of brochures about heat assistance and fall-proofing bathrooms. She met with Grandma alone at the table while I watered the tomato vines. 20 minutes later, she joined me on the porch. She knows what she wants, Ms. Alvarez said, and she said it without prompting. I figured, I said. I'm not here to pick sides, she added. I'm here so if anyone calls later and says she was confused, we can say we saw her. We listened. Thank you, I said. It felt like putting another stake in the ground. I texted Jenna, the agent, and asked her to stop by before Saturday. She came in sneakers and a cardigan, hair in a practical bun. Smart eyes. I've been doing this 12 years, she said. I don't like surprises. Then I won't give you any, I said, and handed her copies of the memo and deed. She read fast, lips moving a little. So even if there were a buyer, she said title won't insure unless the trust authorizes the transfer, which it won't, because there's a life estate. Correct, I said. She exhaled through her nose. Your mother thinks I work for her, she said quietly. I work for the transaction. If the transaction can't happen, I don't want strangers walking through this house on a Saturday like it's already gone. Then cancel the open house, I said. She looked at the papers again. I'll advise a pause, she said. If they insist, I'll set an appointment-only window and post a notice at the door, title under review. That usually chills the foot traffic. Appreciate it, I said. She stepped off the porch and stopped. For what it's worth, she added, my Nana lived to 92 in a rent-controlled one-bedroom. I would have fought the mayor if he'd tried to move her. When she left, I found Grandma in the sewing room, turning a box of buttons like rosary beads. She selected a mother-of-pearl disc and held it to the light. Morals used to be written down, she said. Now I suppose they're recorded down at the county. That's one way to do it, I said. We cooked dinner together, me chopping her, stirring the house, filling with onions and thyme. Mom came in halfway through and set plates without speaking. Dad opened and closed the refrigerator twice. We ate in the clink of flatware. Nobody slammed anything. That was progress small as a button. After dishes, I walked Grandma to the porch and brought her a shawl. The sky went orange over the maple trees. Fireflies tested the edges of the yard and blinked out. Across the street, Mr. Wilcox let his old beagle Taffy trot to the hydrant and back. Normal is a law all by itself. You respect it. At 9, my phone buzzed. Dr. Patel Pralim from Cedar shows exceptions as expected. If they try to open escrow, it won't clear. I let out air I didn't know I'd held. At 10, I set a small camera on the hallway table, not to spy, just to document if someone said Grandma agreed to something, she didn't. People behave when they know the truth is being kept. At 11, Mom tapped my door. We can't afford a new roof, she said, voice in the crack. We can't afford a hospital bill if she falls. We can afford handrails, I said. We can afford a roofer who patches leaks instead of selling you a whole new truss. She leaned her head against the frame. I don't want to be the bad guy. Then don't, I said. Ask. Don't decide. She's earned that. I didn't sleep much. When I did, it was the shallow kind you get on a plane when your neck kinks and your brain finds static to hum along to. At 05:30, I gave up brewed coffee and watched the yard turn from gray to green. Grandma patted in slippers and poured herself half a cup. First cup is for looking, she said. Second is for talking. We looked. The maple lifted its hands to the breeze. A cardinal scolded a squirrel for daring the feeder. Somewhere a screen door snapped. My phone pinged at 7:12, showing set for noon. 2 couples, 1 cash buyer. No open house sign then. Appointments only. Better for everyone's blood pressure. Worse for pretending this wasn't happening. I put on jeans and boots and a clean black t-shirt. Not a uniform, but it felt like one. Grandma tied a scarf over her hair and put on lipstick the color of strawberries. She tucked the doctor's letter in her cardigan pocket like a talisman. Jenna arrived at 11:40 and taped a sheet of paper beside the Bell notice title under Review, Trust, Life Estate, Recorded. She nodded to me. If anyone gives your grandmother a hard time, I'll walk them right back to their car. Appreciate it, I said again and meant it twice. At noon on the dot, a silver SUV rolled to the curb. A young couple stepped out, their baby sleeping in a bucket seat, a diaper bag with a pattern of whales. They looked at the porch swing like it was a postcard from a life they wanted badly. My chest softened and hardened at the same time. Jenna greeted them. Before we go in, she said, I need you to read the notice. There are title issues that may prevent a sale. The man frowned at the paper. The woman glanced at the windows like she could see the years pressed against the glass. We'll look anyway, she said, gentle. For ideas. They took their shoes off and stepped inside like church. Grandma sat at the table with a glass of water and smiled. The baby never woke. At 12:45, the second car pulled up, a black sedan, tinted windows, a man in an expensive polo with a watch that could finance a foundation. He didn't look at the notice. He looked at the yard like it would make a nice place for a pool if you were okay cutting down the maple. He shook Jenna's hand and didn't say his name. When he stepped into the entryway, he met me first. Afternoon, I said. He gave me the kind of smile people use when they don't plan on remembering you. Cash buyer, he said, as if that were a charm. Title under review, I said. He laughed like I'd told a sweet joke. Everything is under review, he said. Until it isn't. He walked past me into the kitchen and saw Grandma. She didn't stand. She didn't have to. She put her hand flat on the table and pressed as if reminding the wood who it belonged to. The man toured the rooms fast, a metronome pace, then came back to the kitchen. We can close in 10 days, he told Jenna, not looking at me or Grandma. As is. No inspections. Jenna pointed with 2 fingers at the notice by the door. You'll need to talk to title, she said. There's a recorded trust and life estate. He waved a hand. We clear clouds. We have people for that. He looked at Grandma, then really looked, and smiled without warmth. You'll like the new place, he said. No stairs? Grandma took the doctor's letter out of her pocket and slid it across the table, the way you slide a winning card to end a hand. I'm not going anywhere, she said. The man's smile held, but his eyes did not. He turned to Jenna. I'll have my attorney call the title office, he said. Do that, she said. He left without shaking hands. The door shut softly. Outside, he made a call before he reached the sidewalk. At 1:22, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Voicemail transcription populated in pieces. This is Greg at Cedar Title. Escrow opened. Trust and life estate on record. Underwriter won't insure. The last line came through clean. There will be no closing. I looked at Grandma. She looked at me. Neither of us said a word. We didn't need to. By Monday morning, the yard sign still leaned in the grass like a dare, but the neighborhood had already moved on to trash pickup and sprinklers. Inside, none of us had. Dad's laptop lived on the kitchen table, now the cursor blinking in the middle of a spreadsheet, like it was waiting for permission to add up a future that wasn't going to happen. At 9:06 a.m., his phone buzzed, and he answered on speaker by accident. Tom Gregg from Cedar Title. Wanted to update you. We opened an escrow file at the buyer's request. The prelim shows a recorded trust and a life estate. Our underwriter won't insure a transfer without trustee authorization and life tenant consent. In short, there will be no closing. Dad jabbed the speaker icon so hard the call dropped. He stared across the room at me like I'd put a boot through his windshield. What did you do, Sarah? I wrote down what Grandma said for the last 60 years, I said. Mom folded a dish towel, unfolded. It folded it again. Her voice went small. We thought if we moved fast, maybe she wouldn't be frightened by change. She's not frightened by change, I said. She's frightened by being handled. Dad pushed back from the table, hard enough to make the chair bark on tile. Handled. We're paying the taxes. We're patching the old furnace with duct tape and crossed fingers. We are drowning here. Then tell me you're drowning, I said, soft as I could make it. Don't tell a stranger to measure the windows. We were still standing like that, me trying to keep my hands open, Dad trying not to throw his when the doorbell rang. Jenna? She'd brought a printed copy of the preliminary report with yellow highlighter lines. She set it on the table and tapped a paragraph with the capped end of a pen. This is where everything stops, she said, voice flat, with a particular mercy of clarity. Dad read aloud, stumbling over the legalese. Exception. Title subject to Evelyn Brooks' revocable trust as recorded. Life estate reserved to Evelyn Brooks. Any conveyance requires execution by trustee and consent of life tenant. He dropped the page. What does that even mean in English? It means Jenna said kind but firm, the house belongs to the rules you recorded 2 days too late. And those rules say your mother lives here as long as she lives and Sarah won't sign a sale. Mom sank into a chair. Dad paced a short line between the fridge and the sink. 6 steps. Turned 6 steps back the way men pace when they're searching for an angle that isn't there. What about cash buyers? He asked finally. We had an offer 10-day close. They can't get title insurance, Jenna said. No reputable escrow will close without it. A cash buyer who doesn't care about insurance is a cash buyer who doesn't care if you lose the house in a lawsuit. That's not who you want to sell to. Dad stopped pacing. How do I unwind this? You don't, I said. You live with it. Like you were supposed to. He met my eyes. Something in his shoulders changed, not softened exactly, but shifted from push to stall. We were trying to get ahead of the roof, he said. The leak over the back bedroom. Insurance is threatening to cancel. The property tax reassessment hits next month. The agent said if we waited through winter, we'd lose 30 grand. Then ask for 30 people to lift, Dad, I said. This isn't a 4-man carry. It's a family. He laughed once, a short, dry sound with no humor in it. Family. Right. Jenna slid her card across the table. I'm going to mark the listing temporarily withdrawn while title is under review, she said. No sign, no more showings. If you want to relist someday with the trustee and life tenant's consent, call me. If you want me to come take the sign out now, I've got a wrench in my car. Dad didn't answer. He was staring at the word exception, like it had cheated at cards. Grandma shuffled in from the hallway, wearing a sweater she'd knit in a color halfway between oatmeal and the underside of a sparrow's wing. Is coffee still hot? She asked no one and everyone. I'll pour it, I said. She sat and wrapped both hands around the mug like it had a pulse. Did the papers do what papers do? They did, I said. She nodded once satisfied and took a careful sip. Then we can all stop acting like somebody died. The afternoon was ordinary, by forced laundry calls, a grocery run for eggs and bananas. Ordinary is heavy when you've been bracing for impact. Mom scrubbed the sink until the steel clouded. Dad stacked mail. I replaced the batteries in the smoke alarms and put non-skid strips on the back steps because the rain had started and made the wood slick. At 5, a black sedan rolled to the curb again. The man with the watch came to the porch without knocking. We're not showing today, Jenna said before he could speak. She'd stayed after lunch ostensibly to update the online listing. In reality, she'd stayed like you sit with a friend after a bad diagnosis. I'm not here for a showing, he said. I'm here with an offer. He held up an envelope like an altar card. Above asking. 10 days. We'll pay your relocation. Jenna didn't reach for it. There is no deal to be made, she said. Title is impaired. He looked past her to Dad, found the soft target and smiled. I can get this done, he said. I do this all the time. I stepped into the doorway. Not here, I said. Not today, not ever. He shifted the angle of attack. You must be the soldier. He said it like a compliment with a bent nail in it. I respect service. But this is how the market works. Some people hold on too long. Some do, I said, and some get thrown when they can still stand. We're not one of those. He sighed like a man being inconvenienced by decency. You'll change your mind? We won't, I said. He flicked the envelope with his finger and tucked it back into his jacket. Lawyers talk to lawyers, he said to Dad, friendly as a hook. I'll have mine call yours. Do that, I said. He looked at me like I'd spoken out of turn, then feigned a courteous smile at Grandma. Ma'am? Grandma didn't blink. Young man, she said, don't let your mouth write checks your soul can't cash. He missed the joke and left. The sedan hissed away in the wet. Dad watched the street long after the taillights were gone. Then he turned and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. You think you're the only one who knows how to make calls? He said. You think you're the only one who can get a judge to read a line and freeze. I don't want a judge, I said. I want a roof that doesn't leak and a mother who sleeps and a father who tells the truth while he's still got breath. He pointed a shaking finger at the stack of stamped copies on the counter. You want truth? You ambushed us with paper. You ambushed Grandma with a sign, I said. This is me ambushing the ambush. Mom pressed her palms on the counter like she was steadying a boat. Stop, she said, voice frayed. Please. We stopped. Sometimes love looks like shutting up before you say a thing you'll spend 10 Christmases trying to dial back. Jenna took her cue, slid the yard sign out of the dirt, and carried it to the trunk of her crossover. When she came back, her ponytail was damp with rain. I'll email a withdrawal form, she said to Mom. No rush. Breathe first. After she left the house, settled into a damp quiet that magnified every drip from the eaves, I made tea because food was too much work. Grandma took hers with honey and watched the window like the weather might apologize if given a chance. At 7:43 p.m., Dad's phone lit the counter with a number I recognized from the county website Clerk of Court. He answered, listened, kept his face very still, and hung up. What Mom asked. He smoothed his tie and looked at me like a man stepping into a role. We'll see you in court, he said. I didn't rise to it. I nodded, collected the stamped copies, and put them in my bag. Okay, I said. If that's the road you want, I know the mile markers. He blinked. He'd expected tears or a shout. He didn't know what to do with calm. I set Grandma's teacup in the sink and turned off the kitchen light. The rain slowed. Somewhere 2 blocks over a late game let out a cheer that broke into laughter and car doors. Normal kept going. That was the point. You stop the crisis and the world gets to keep being unspectacular. Upstairs, I laid out tomorrow's clothes the way I would before a jump. Boots aligned, socks tucked, shirt folded, copies in a folder pen that writes on damp paper. I texted Dr. Patel, he'll file. I'm ready. She replied with a single line that steadied me like a hand on a small of a back. So are we. I slept better than I had in a week. Not deep, not long. Just enough to carry a person through a room where wood smells like polish and a judge reads one line and the world stops arguing with itself. The courthouse smelled like coffee floor wax and nerves. County Courtroom 3 wasn't much 2 rows of benches, a flag a clock that ticked louder than it should. Dr. Patel was there before me, files squared pen-capped. Grandma sat beside me in her oatmeal sweater, chin up like she was waiting on a hymn. Mom smoothed her skirt. Dad stared at the counsel table hard enough to dent it. Opposing counsel arrived in a navy suit with a briefcase that had seen exactly 1 rainstorm. Keating, he said to the clerk, as if the name should mean something to the furniture. He opened with confidence the way some men open with volume. Your Honor, this is a straightforward matter. Our client simply wished to responsibly manage a deteriorating property for the welfare of Mrs. Brooks. The so-called trust was rushed through last week at the insistence of a granddaughter who is by all accounts overbearing. He glanced my way like he expected me to salute. Judge Albright didn't look impressed. Silver hair, clean bench eyes that had seen every version of a family swallowing tax. We'll keep the temperature down, she said, not unkindly. Ms. Patel. Dr. Patel stood like a metronome, calm, precise, not a wasted word. Your Honor, the record already contains 3 pieces of paper that matter: the memorandum of trust, the life estate deed, and a letter from Mrs. Brooks's physician. In addition, Adult Protective Services performed a wellness check. Mrs. Brooks is oriented and clear. The trust was not rushed. It was recorded promptly once Mrs. Brooks expressed her wishes. That's called doing it right. Keating tried again. We believe undue influence. Belief is not evidence, Judge Albright said. Do you have a capacity evaluation to the contrary? Any affidavit contradicting Dr. Shaw's letter? He shuffled. Not at this time. Then we're not going to pretend we do. The judge leaned toward the mic. Is Mrs. Brooks able to speak for herself? Grandma stood without my help. Yes, ma'am. The judge softened her tone the way good judges do for people who have paid their taxes for 60 years. Mrs. Brooks, tell me in your own words what you want to happen with your home. I want to stay, Grandma said. I sweep my porch every morning. I have tulips that don't like being moved, and neither do I. When I go, it'll be in God's time, not a weekend. A smile tried to climb into the judge's eyes, and then thought better of it. Understood. She looked to the gallery. Is there a representative from Title here? Greg, from Cedar Title, stood from the back in a sport coat that tried to be a suit. Yes, Your Honor. Summarize your prelim. He stepped to the rail, voice steady. Cedar Title opened escrow at a buyer's request. The prelim uncovered exceptions, a recorded revocable trust naming Ms. Mitchell trustee and a life estate reserved to Mrs. Brooks. Our underwriter will not ensure any transfer absent trustee execution and life tenant consent. There will be no closing without both. Keating objected to the phrasing as if grammar were the problem. The judge waved him down with 2 fingers. Adult Protective Services, she asked next. Ms. Alvarez rose. We made a home visit, Your Honor. Mrs. Brooks articulated her wishes. We observed no pressure in that conversation. We provided resources and documented the visit. The judge turned to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Brooks, I'm going to give you space to speak. Keep it brief. Don't disparage. Tell me why you pushed this. Mom's voice came out smaller than the room. We were scared, she said. The roof leaks. Taxes keep going up. We can't lift like we used to. Dad's jaw worked, and every contractor starts at $10,000. We thought cash now would be simpler. The judge nodded, like a woman who had replaced a roof she didn't want to pay for. Fear makes people hurry, she said. Sometimes it makes them forget who the house belongs to. She picked up the trust memo, read the instrument number aloud like it mattered, and in that room, it did. Then she read the single sentence that pulled the cord on the whole parachute life estate reserved to Evelyn Brooks. Silence changed shape. It wasn't tense anymore. It was settled. Here is the ruling, Judge Albright said, crisp now. The court finds Mrs. Brooks capable and clear. The trust and life estate are valid and in effect. Any attempt to list or convey the property without trustee execution and life tenant consent is enjoined. Title companies are so advised. Keating shifted. Your Honor, surely the court can't. The court can, and just did, she said. Further, I'm ordering no harassment provisions, no pressure, no surprise showings, no third-party visits to persuade. Contact about the property goes through counsel. Dad swallowed something that didn't want to go down. What are we supposed to do about the roof? Ask for help, like decent people. The judge said. Then gentler. There are county senior repair grants, utility weatherization programs, and property tax relief for fixed income. Ms. Alvarez can connect you. Ms. Patel, I want a mediated family plan within 30 days. Who pays what? Who calls which contractor? How decisions are made without turning the kitchen into a foxhole. I'm not here to punish. I'm here to keep an 86-year-old from being shuffled like a card. Mom wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. Yes, Your Honor. Keating tried one last door. Costs, Your Honor. I'm not shifting fees today, she said. But if I see another listing go live while this injunction is in place, I'll be in a different mood. The gavel didn't smack. It clicked. Court adjourned. In the hallway, the acoustics changed, so you could hear every coin drop into every pocket. Ms. Alvarez handed Mom a one-pager about home repair grants. Greg pressed his card into Dad's palm. Call me when you're ready to talk about replacement versus patch, he said. I know 3 roofers who charge like humans. Dr. Patel touched Grandma's elbow. You did fine, she said. Grandma nodded. It's easier to tell the truth when your feet are in your own doorway. Dad hovered with a look I recognized from Little League, the one men wear when they want to yell but settle for looking for a dugout. He finally walked up to me, eyes tired. You made me into the villain, he said. No, I said. You did something that would have made you into one. I stopped it. He clenched and unclenched his hands. I was trying to keep us from drowning. Then say, I'm drowning, I said. Not open house is Saturday. There's a difference. He looked over my shoulder at Grandma, who was talking to the clerk about which window took parking validation. His face shifted the way faces do when pride loses 10 degrees and lets blood back into the room. We'll need help, he said quietly. We'll get it, I said. But we're not selling her out of her own kitchen to do it. Mom drifted over, eyes rimmed, but softer. I don't want to lose you over this, she said. Then let's not, I said. We'll put it in writing before we put it in feelings. We walked out into a sky that had the decency to be plain. On the steps, Grandma took my arm, and then didn't. I can do stairs, she said, and did. Back at the house, the yard felt like it had exhaled. No sign in the grass, no strangers on the porch. The maple kept its counsel. Dr. Patel came by at 6 with a yellow pad and a box of grocery store cookies. She wrote headings in neat block letters. Roof 3 bids, trustee approves scope, parents pay X, Sarah matches, Y timeline, Z'd. Tax relief apply by Friday. Mom gathers documents, Sarah scans. Safety, handrails, bath grips, porch light timer. Dad installs or hire Mr. Wilcox's nephew. Communication. No decisions without Grandma. All property emails, CC Council. We built a plan while the oven ticked and the dog across the street argued with a squirrel. It wasn't warm. It wasn't cold. It was work. When we'd finished, Mom signed her name like she was laying down a weapon. Dad signed his like a man who'd rather be somewhere else, but knew this was the right place. Grandma made a small X next to life estate acknowledged, then drew a tiny tulip because she could. We ate the cookies. Nobody complimented them. That's how you know they were fine. After Dr. Patel left, Dad stood at the sink with a dish towel he didn't use. What if the roof guy says the whole thing needs replacing? He asked the window. Then we get a second bid, I said, and a third, and we call the church men's group for Saturday ladders and patch tar. He nodded, once emotion deeper than it looked. We were almost done for the night when the black sedan turned into the curb again. Same watch, same polo, same smile with frost on it. He stayed on the sidewalk like a cat that knows where the property line is. You wasted everyone's time, he called pleasant as poison. I stepped onto the porch. Title says otherwise. He lifted his phone as if to take a picture. I'll find another angle. Try a different street, I said. He weighed the math of pride, and gas money pocketed the phone and drove off. The taillights turned red at the corner and vanished. Inside, Grandma rinsed her teacup and set it in the rack. That the pool man, she asked. Not anymore, I said. She laughed, then soft, like something tight had finally unspooled. Good, she said. I don't swim. I walked her to the porch with her shawl. The air had a little bite in it. Somewhere, a baseball game, wrapped with the low cheer of people who still had work in the morning. The neighborhood resumed its evening. Behind us on the kitchen table, the plan sat under a magnet with a ceramic rooster that had been there since 1982. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was a truce, drawn in ink instead of hope. Tomorrow we'd start calling roofers. Tomorrow we'd fill out forms. Tomorrow we'd learn whether pride could be repointed like mortar. For tonight, the house was quiet and the porch swing had room for two. Grandma patted the plank beside her. Sit, she said. Then tell me how it feels to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. I sat. Like this, I said. You check your lines, you look once you look again, and then you step where you meant to go. She nodded. Seems we did. The first roofer said we needed a whole new roof. 12 grand, maybe 15 if the decking was soft. Dad looked at me like the man had just quoted the price of a helicopter. I asked for a ladder and permission to climb. The roofer hesitated until I told him I jumped out of planes for a living. He shrugged, set the ladder, and I went up behind him. On the ridge, the world smelled like wet shingles and sun. He pointed with his knife. Your leaks are around 3 busted tabs and a cracked boot on the vent. This isn't a tear-off job. Not yet. Then write me 2 bids, I said. 1 to patch right, 1 to replace when the grant comes through. Back on the ground, Dad took off his cap and rubbed the place where hair used to be. I could have asked that, he said. You could have, I said. There wasn't any point belaboring the part where he hadn't. We made calls. Ms. Alvarez routed us to a county seniors program that would match funds for urgent repairs. Mom and I sat at the kitchen table with a checklist the color of a stoplight proof of income tax bill photos of the leak, the stamped trust papers. We borrowed Mr. Wilcox's scanner because it fed pages straight and didn't scream when it jammed. Dr. Patel swung by after work with a portable printer like a magician pulls out scarves. She adjusted the family plan into something a judge would sign, and we would actually follow 3 bids for any repair. No more we already hired someone declarations. No decisions without Grandma present, even on things as small as the color of the new porch light. Dad resisted a little, the way a man resists a new wrench because the old one fits his hand. Then he signed steadier than last time. Mom signed, then added her maiden name in parentheses, like she was reminding the page who she'd been before mortgages and migraines. I signed last and wrote my number in block letters under the heading, Trustee After Hours. The county inspector came on a Wednesday afternoon in steel-toe boots and a windbreaker. He took photos of the damp plaster ring in the back bedroom and the rust halo around the vent boot. "You caught it in time," he said. "We see ceilings on the floor. This is patchable. We'll recommend the matching grant for a patch now and reassess next year." By Thursday, Greg from Cedar Title had left a message that sounded almost cheerful. "No more escrow calls," he said. "Your life estate is doing what life estates do, holding the center." On Friday, the church men's group showed up with 2 ladders, 3 tool belts, and a cooler full of lemonades. Dad rolled his eyes at their jokes and then climbed a ladder with them anyway. They replaced the boot, slid new tabs under the lifted shingles, nailed true, and troweled the black tar like icing. By dusk, the leak was a memory, and the roof line looked like a line again. We did small things that matter too. I installed 2 grab bars in the bathroom, one by the toilet, one in the tub, and a motion sensor for the porch light. Mom labeled Grandma's meds with the big weekly box and tossed anything that expired in the Reagan administration. We tightened the wobbly banister and put non-skid treads on the back steps. Pride is fine. Grip is better. That weekend, I drove Grandma to the craft store for new cushions for the porch swing because the old ones had flattened into pancakes. She chose a gingham that made the swing look like a picnic and patted the seat like a cat. On Sunday after church, Dad grilled chicken thighs out back while I watched the neighborhood be itself kids on scooters, a teenager practicing parallel parking with too much brake. Mr. Wilcox's beagle finding the same spot he finds every evening and acting surprised about it. When the food was ready, we brought the plates to the porch instead of the table. It's hard to fight on a porch. The air reminds you to go easy. Halfway through dinner, Dad cleared his throat. "I owe you something," he said. Grandma set down her fork. "Make it short," she said. "Food's warm." He smiled without showing teeth. "I was scared," he said. "The kind of scared that makes you move fast, so you don't have to think. I thought if I got the sign up, we could outrun the part where we sit with Mom and ask her what she wants. That was wrong." He looked at me the way a man looks when he's handing over a set of keys. "You made me feel like a child in my own house," he said, honest and a little raw. "I felt like a guardian in my grandmother's," I said, "which I am." We sat with that. It didn't bruise like I thought it might. It landed, and then it softened the way thick bread softens under gravy. Mom reached for Grandma's hand. "We should have asked," she said, "before we planned." Grandma squeezed back. "You should have," she said, then gentler. "Now you are." We didn't clink glasses. We didn't make a speech. We ate potato salad and watched the neighborhood turn blue at the edges. It was a truce that felt like more than a truce. It felt like a boundary everyone could recognize without a map. On Monday, the county letter came, grant approved for the patch application received for property tax relief. Please allow 4 to 6 weeks. Mom put the letter on the fridge under a magnet shaped like a state fair pig. Dad called the roofer and scheduled the work for Thursday, even though the men from church had already staunched the bleeding. "I want it done right," he said. "Right keeps peace." Jenna stopped by with a bag of tomatoes from her garden and an envelope of signed withdrawal forms for the listing. "No fee," she said when Mom reached for a checkbook. "Consider it my penance for not reading the room fast enough." "You read it," I said. "You just didn't know we were going to rearrange the furniture?" She laughed and looked around. "Good rearrangement," she said. The black sedan didn't come back. Men like that know when a house stops being a deal and returns to being a home. There are easier streets. I drove back to Fort Liberty mid-week. Work doesn't wait because your family learned how to breathe. Before I left, I put a copy of the trust binder in a fire safe and left the key with Grandma in an Altoids tin labeled Bobby Pins the way she wanted it. I laid out one more handrail this time on the back steps where the tomatoes spill over the path. Dad promised to paint it next weekend. I believed him. On base, the motor pool smelled like diesel and dirt. Boots thudded on concrete, and the jumpmaster's cadence rolled out across the hangar the way it always does, steady, exact, a comfort disguised as order. I stowed my duffel, hung my maroon beret on the hook inside my locker, and touched my jump wings without meaning to. It felt like touching the house, earned metal and honest wood. That night, I called home. Mom answered on the second ring. "We ate on the porch," she said. "Your father fixed the squeak on the swing." I thought the squeak was the point, I said. "Apparently not," she said, and I could hear the smile in the line. She passed the phone to Grandma. "Tell me," Grandma said, "how does it feel to fall out of the sky and land on your feet?" "Better than falling and not knowing who packed your chute," I said. She hummed a satisfied little sound. "Paperwork is a parachute," she said. "Didn't know that before this week. Do now." We didn't need to say anything else. Love is sometimes the two good words, "We're okay." Weeks turned into a pattern that looked like a life. The roofer patched, the ceiling dried. Mom chose a new light fixture, less likely to collect dead moths. Grandma's tulips yellowed, then came back red. Dad learned the names of the county women in the tax office and used ma'am like it was a key to a door. Ms. Alvarez checked in once and heard nothing urgent in our voices and marked her file "closed services declined" in a way that meant not needed instead of ignored. On a Sunday swing through town, I brought Grandma a small flag to tuck in the window box for Memorial Day. She pressed the stick into the dirt like she was planting a promise. We sat and watched the street and counted exactly 4 bikes and 1 skateboard and 3 dogs and 0 black sedans. "People will say you were hard," Grandma said at last. "Somebody always will." "I wasn't gentle," I said. "I was exact." "Exact is a kind of gentle," she said. "It keeps people from bleeding." I told her about a jump I'd done the week before, how the air grabbed my sleeves and the ground rose, how you keep your knees soft because landing stiff breaks more than landing wrong. She listened, like sky is a subject in school, and she wanted an A. Before dinner, Dad pulled me aside by the grill. He looked older and less tired at the same time. "I said some things that won't fit back in my mouth," he said. "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to let me prove there's more to say." "That's a good sentence," I said. "Prove is a good word." He nodded. "I'll bring the paint for that handrail Saturday," he said. "White or green?" "Green," I said, "so it looks like it belongs." He laughed once, a real one this time. "Yeah," he said. "Belonging's the point." I won't dress this up. We didn't turn into a TV family. We still bickered about whether the new porch mat should say, "Welcome," or just be a mat. But the heat had gone out of the arguments. The plan on the fridge became a habit in the bones. When fear showed up with its clipboard, it had to sign in like everyone else. If there's a moral, it's not complicated. Boundaries are love with a spine. The law isn't the opposite of kindness. It's one of its tools. And sometimes the bravest thing a person can do isn't to jump, it's to stand. When people ask what being a paratrooper has to do with a White House on Maple Street, I tell them this. We train to move first to land where we meant to and to hold a perimeter so others can live their lives. That's all I did for Grandma. I checked my lines. I looked once. I looked again. And then I stepped where I meant to go. The porch swing still complains sometimes, but softer. The roof doesn't. The tulips have opinions. The maple keeps its shade. If you drive by, you won't see a sign. You'll see an old woman with a cardigan and a granddaughter with a short haircut and a family that learned to ask before they decide. And if you're listening in from a kitchen where the table is covered in papers and fear, hear me ask for help before you grab a pen. Put it in writing before you put it in anger. Protect the people who made you possible and do it the quiet way that sticks. All the way.